Hello everybody, Spooky Sand Woman here. Thank you for checking out episode who frickin' knows of Seduce Me the Otome. Last episode, we're staying home and helping do whatever we're doing in the garden with James. James and I headed out to the garden. It had been years since I had been in the small field. The gazebo is smaller than I remembered, but I had grown since I last seen it. James rolled up his sleeve and took in a breath of air before sighing contently.
So, we need to cater to the plants and make sure there are no muddy spots in the grass. It may take a while. Are you sure you wish to help me and not the others?
I shook my head, rolling up my sleeves as well. Yeah. Tough guys. I can handle it. I'd rather work outside anyway. James nodded with a smile before handing me a watering can, gesturing to the group of flowers by the side of the yard. I walked over and began to water the flowers. However, as silence took control of the air, I felt the need to start a conversation. I'm gonna ask him a question. So, do you like flowers? I wanted to smack myself. That was a terrible conversation starter. I mentally smacked myself before hearing James chuckle softly. I turned to look at him as he nodded.
They have a wonderful aesthetic. Many people would think that flowers are simple and rather boring, but I've learned secrets about flowers.
Secrets about flowers? What, like a special way to water them or something?
You could say that. There are right and wrong ways to water flowers.
Can you show me? James gave a small smirk before walking over and standing behind me. I instantly blushed as he brought his arms underneath mine, guiding my watering can. The water gently poured over the dirt, sinking into it and dissolving into the roots. However, my concentration on the water was broken by the sound of James's voice in my ear. Who doggy?
Flowers need to be cared for gently, like a fragile light. Too much power and they'll break. They're too wither and they'll wither and fade away. It's like caring for a
A loved one. For some reason, those three words echoed in my head. James continued to guide my watering can, using gentle hands to lead my arms and my body. It was almost like a dance. Eventually, he let go and stepped away from me. I turned to see him as he simply smiled at me before returning to his work. I felt my face with my hand, feeling the extreme warmth before shaking my head and continuing to water the remaining plants. Jesus. Aw, that was it? Lame. The hour of the house party had arrived. In my mind, I kept double and triple checking the essentials for the party. Knowing my dad, he had invited his business partners and the executives of the Anderson Company to show me off. I stood in front of my mirror in my room, staring at my form as a million thoughts ran through my mind. It was just a housewarming party, but at the same time, it wasn't. It was a chance to show my dad that I was better than his expectations. It was a chance for me to see my parents as a woman. It was my test to see if I was really ready to live on my own. Well, not truly alone. I had the incubi to thank, but even so, I didn't have my dad guiding me or my mom helping me through living alone. A knock on my door broke my thoughts, surprisingly. Who is it?
Hey, are you okay in there? Your parents will be here soon, so you should hurry getting ready.
Well, I'm ready, but...
What? I'm sure you look fine, Anderson. Just come on out.
Alright. As soon as I opened the door to the hall, I watched as Naomi's and Suzu's faces turned from smiles to complete awestruck stares. What?
Dude, you look hot. Yeah, you look amazing. Where did you get that dress?
I've had it for a while. I just never had the chance to wear it. I figured I might as well bring it out now. I stepped out of my room and closed my bedroom door behind me. As I walked down the hall to the grand lobby, the incubi stood waiting for me at the bottom, all dressed to the nines as proper servants.
Whoa, they really know how to dress well, don't they?
Yep. Yeah. I was slightly taken aback on how great the boys looked in uniform. Each had the poise of a perfect gentleman. Even Sam! I slowly began to climb down the steps with Suzu and Naomi behind me. The boys watched as I descended the staircase one step at a time, like knights waiting for their princess. I felt my face slightly flush, but I quickly shook my head to try and regain my thoughts. As I reached the last step, James offered his hand out to me and walked me down the final step, smiling.
As beautiful as a princess, miss.
Thank you.
So, are you prepared for tonight?
Sure. I had to be confident in my skills. My dad expected a lot out of me already. If I faltered at this party, who knows what he would think of me. I had to assure myself in every word that came out of my mouth that I was ready. The other boys smiled assuringly at me, which made me feel a little better about everything. I looked at my phone and marked the time. Almost right on cue, the doorbell rang. I gulped. I could practically feel my dad's aura from behind the door. Sam and Eric quickly rushed to the doors and opened the double doors wide to reveal my parents, both dressed in their best. Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad.
Oh my. I didn't know your bequeathment came with servants.
It was probably overlooked. Besides, who would deny good service?
I was completely shocked. My parents didn't question the boys. They didn't ask for verification or anything. I looked at the boys and noticed Sam and Eric staring intently at my parents. Were they using their powers on them? They had to be. There was no way they'd be okay with this otherwise.
I guess the servants counted as belongings to the house.
My mother quickly rushed to give me a large hug. I hugged her back, inhaling her perfume. It had only been a couple of days, but living away from the ones who raised me was hard. My mother soon let me go and looked at my outfit.
Gorgeous. You look so lovely. David, look at your daughter and tell her I'm right.
I looked at my dad, who was looking around the lobby like an inspector. I stood my ground, waiting for him to look at me. When he did, he let a small smile grace his lips.
Your mother's right. You look like you're all grown up.
The world around me stopped as my heart pounded in my chest. Did my dad just compliment me on his own accord? My mother was grinning ear to ear at his words. I was just beyond speechless. Thank you, Daddy. However, his cold face quickly returned as he began to look around once again. Blah, blah, blah.
I assume that you're ready, then, to impress the rest of the guests, correct?
What do you mean?
The entire board from Anderson Toys is coming tonight. Even the vice chairman's son will be coming. All of them will be measuring your potential.
My potential?
To become CEO of the company.
I knew it. Something was off about tonight, and now this party had become much more than I had anticipated. I gulped silently, but I nodded in response. I looked at the incubi, and they were continuing to be servants for my father's approval. I looked behind me and saw Naomi and Suzu raise their thumbs at me for encouragement. I let out a small breath before feeling my body accept the situation. I felt a weight in my gut, but I had to hide it. As if time zoomed forward, all of a sudden the main hall of the lobby was full of guests. Men and women in formal or business attire showed up to meet me and see my new home. I didn't expect many to come, but once again, I was surprised that night. I shook hands with many officials and executive members, putting on the professional face my dad trained me to have. I felt overwhelmed, but I hid it well behind a small smile and a handshake. Many even asked me questions. I tried my best to reply as maturely as possible. I had to remember, say what they want to hear, not what you want to say.
So, how do you feel living on your own at such a young age?
I'm doing my best.
So sorry about your grandfather passing away. It really hit all of us hard.
Thank you for your
You
condolences.
have college plans.
I felt like the questions came up one after another. It was tough to answer some of them because they weren't about me. They were about the company.
What do you think will happen with the company now that your grandfather has passed?
It will get back on track.
What do you think of the philanthropic policy the company has?
That
I think the company should expand from just toys.
it's a toy company. Eventually, the questions stopped and I was back to being by myself. Naomi and Susie were mingling in the crowds and the incubi were doing their jobs, so I was all alone in a room full of strangers. It was unnerving to think about, but at least I wasn't being questioned left and right anymore. Suddenly, though, my mom pushed her way through the crowd to me, bringing along someone I didn't know.
Honey, I'd like to introduce you to someone. This kind gentleman is the son of the vice chairman.
With my mother stood a man who looked only a couple of years older than me. He smiled and held out his hand to me, silently asking for my hand.
Hi, I'm Andrew Lewis. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Anderson.
There. As I placed my hand in his, he raised it to his lips and kissed over my knuckles. I felt my face burn slightly at the gesture. Andrew smiled at me before releasing my hand.
I'm honored to be invited here.
My mother smiled at both of us, which made me slightly concerned. Why was she excited to introduce me to Andrew?
So,
Mom.
you organized this party very well, Miss Anderson.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Praise is very much deserved.
Andrew then chuckled nervously, bringing a soft fist to his lips to cover his laugh properly before smiling at me.
I'm sorry if I seem a little forward. I've just been excited to meet Harold Anderson's granddaughter.
Huh? Why?
He used to talk about you all the time in the office on how you helped him refine his toys. I only attended meetings and heard all of the stories. You've helped a lot with the success of the company without having to actually work there.
Oh, wow. I didn't know he talked about me. That would explain everyone's fascination with me and their rather personal questions. I looked at Andrew, who had a kind face to me. Something about him seemed off, and I didn't know what it was. He seemed to be hiding something. Whether it was good or bad, I was not able to find out. I felt someone walk up beside me, causing me to turn to them. Next to me was my dad, giving his cold stare to Andrew, who had suddenly become tense.
So, you're Jared's son.
Andrew's body twitched slightly. Whether it was fear or insult, Andrew locked eyes with my father. I couldn't help but feel the tension between them. It irked me how fragile the air had become, enough to break at the wrong word.
You're the one who wants to be the next CEO of the Anderson Company.
I stared at Andrew. This guy wanted to take my grandfather's place as CEO? I thought the vice chairman wanted the position.
David, leave the poor boy alone.
I'm merely testing the boy's conversational skills. Nothing wrong with that.
Of course not, sir.
And polite as well. Interesting.
If you'll excuse me.
Quickly, Andrew retreated away from my family into the crowd of people. I'm going to stay put. I watched as he disappeared into the crowd towards the back of the house. I was worried, but I gave him his space. He obviously needed it.
He's not CEO.
That's because you practically interrogated the young man.
A little questioning shouldn't have bothered him. He's obviously not looking for any title in art.
I bit my tongue. I didn't want to make a scene with my dad. One wrong word and he'd lecture me in front of everyone. That was not something that I wanted at my housewarming party. I let out a sigh before looking at the clock. It was getting close to midnight, meaning that the party was going to end soon. I lowered my gaze out to the window and saw a limo pull up. Huh? Whose limo was that?
Oh, that must be Lewis's car.
I'll go get him. Stay with your father so you can escort your guests out together.
Good, I'm so tired. Yes, Mom. My mother left my dad and me to slowly escort the guests out. My dad held his simple smile as he thanked each person for coming. I did the same. Andrew quickly passed the doors before I could speak. Eventually, only Suzu, Naomi, my parents, and the incubi were left. My dad suddenly walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder with a smile. I stared up at him, a wave of confusion washing over my face. What?
You did good tonight. I'm proud.
Oh! Thank you, Dad.
Keep it up, and you'll be a good CEO.
Oh. Right.
All right. Your mother and I have to leave. I'm sure Naomi and Suzu need to leave as well. Just because it's Saturday doesn't mean you should stay up all night.
Fuck you, Dad. I do what I want. Oh, right. I still do what I want.
Thanks for having us. It was a great party.
We'll come visit tomorrow or something. All right?
Right. See ya.
Good night, sweetie. Come visit us soon.
I will do. All four of my remaining guests were left the building, all but my dad waving back to me. With the last of the guests gone, I sighed and sat on the staircase, exhausted. Phew. That was tiring.
It's not like you had to do any work, though.
Give her a break, man. She was getting interrogated left and right.
Thank you, Matthew.
She handled herself the best she could.
Thank you, Damien.
As expected, princess.
Thank you, Eric.
Since you're exhausted, why not head to bed? We can clean up.
Okie dokie.
Hush, Sam.
Are you guys sure?
Positive. It shouldn't take long. Ho ho ho! It didn't take long. Shifts after all.
I felt a hot shudder run down my spine. The voice from my dreams echoed through the air into my ears. I looked around, panicked, alongside the incubi. James placed a hand on my shoulder, trying to remain calm.
Don't worry. No one will hurt you.
Are you sure? Are you really sure?
All of us shot our head towards the doors, finally pinning down the direction of the voice. The doors quickly swung open, revealing a sight I would have never expected to see. Skin red as blood, eyes black and gold piercing into mine, rough enough clothes and a pistol in his hand. I saw a monster. I covered my mouth to not scream at the sight. Dried blood covered the bandana around his neck as he smirked at me and the boys around me. Beside the red-skinned man was a similar-looking woman in matching thug-like clothes.
Oh, what's the matter, boys? You really didn't think I wouldn't find you, did you?
I hoped you would, you piece of...
All of a sudden, the man raised his gun at Sam's face and instantly pulled the trigger. We all gasped in shock, instinctively expecting to see a bullet run through Sam's face, but...
What the fuck?
What should have been a headshot ended with a loud but empty blank shot. The pistol echoed its empty shots as the man grew more and more pissed, pulling the trigger over and over in aggravation. Luckily for my ears, it became quieter after its first shot.
Why the fuck won't you work?
This place is protected.
What did you say, Shrimp?
This place has a seal, protecting it from hellborn magic.
What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Ah!
The man growled and threw his gun at Sam, who was able to dodge it in time. The pistol bounced off the ground a couple of times before sliding further away, hitting the wall in a final stop. As it stopped moving, the gun faded into a black flame that disappeared into thin air.
The previous owner had this place protected by magic, Malix.
Malix. That was his name. His existence resonated in my memory from the dream I had. However, I looked to Matthew in the same confusion as Malix did. This place is protected by magic?
It would seem that your grandfather had some sort of protected barrier around this house. From the looks of it, it only disables hellborn magic.
Malix's face grew to that of extreme anger, his fist tightening as if he were crushing a stress ball.
What's stopping you from dragging your asses out and shooting you then?
Out of pure instinct, I stepped forward and placed myself between Malix and the boys. With no power, Malix wasn't going to fight. I took that chance to stand up to him instead of being powerless like I was in the dream. Leave them alone. Malix stared wide-eyed at my words. I could feel the boys do the same from behind me. Malix then smirked and leaned in nose to nose with me.
Just who the fuck are you?
That's none of your concern.
You got a big mouth, nameless bitch. You best be careful who you speak to.
Sorry, I just like the way he said that. Duck. I ducked underneath Malix's incoming hand. I stared at his hand and his black flame tattoo in surprise as I took a couple of steps back from Malix. Matthew and Damien stepped in front of me, guarding me from Malix with his arms.
A quick one. I'm liking you more and more.
Back off, Malix!
Don't start acting tough, you pathetic excuse of a demon. You need more protection than her.
Shut up!
Aw, Matthew.
Did I make little Matthew cry? Why don't you just grow a pair?
Grr!
Enough, Malix.
The woman, who had been standing in silence the whole time, planted a firm hand on Malix's shoulder.
Can they see me?
What?
I said, can they see me?
What?
Can they see me?
No.
I need that towel over there.
There's no one directly looking at you.
Well, why the hell not?
Because you're not in line of the
I
camera.
thought you were going to say I wasn't beautiful or something. Wow, you've been in trouble.
The woman who had been standing in silence the whole time planted a firm hand on Malix's shoulder. Malix looked back at her with a growl and a glare that could kill.
Since when did you get the guts to speak out of place?
We both know you never controlled me. I want them dead just like you do. But now's not the time.
Fuck off. I know what I'm doing.
Do you? Even if you did fight them, there's 5 against 2. We never win.
Shut up!
Let's go, Malix! We're wasting our time!
The two growled at each other. If they could have used their magic, I would sense that fire would glow from underneath their teeth. Malix grunted and glared at the boys. He pointed at James, wanting so badly to use his fingers like a knife.
Just wait, boys. We'll get you and fuck you up real good.
Then Malix turned to me, moving his finger to point directly between my eyes.
Step outside. I dare you.
With that, Malix and the woman walked out of the mansion. The doors closed behind them, leaving the boys and I alone once again. I felt my knees give out from under me, forcing the boys to quickly turn to catch me.
Whoa, whoa! Are you alright?
I'm gonna end this episode off here, so thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. Share with your friends if they like devils and boring parties. I know I don't. Bye-bye!